I kind of need to hear the character's voice in my head. Otherwise, I think, I just don't connect with this at all. But sometimes you read it and I just go, I know exactly who that person is. I feel like just an instant connection. Hi, I'm Jean Smart. I'm here with Vanity Fair, and we're going to talk about my career timeline. Are you an angel?
No, I'm just a movie star. I don't think I'd make Angel if I died.
I tell you, they couldn't have sent me anybody better. I've always felt this special bond with you, you know, because we're both country girls from big poor families, and we both have blonde hair, and we both have, you know.
Yeah, I noticed.
Well, at first it was actually very scary. I don't know why in particular, because I had done a lot of theater. So I think that's the difference between doing just camera work and doing theater. Theater gives you an enormous amount of self-confidence, I think. I had done about 5 series before that, but I must have unconsciously known that that one was going to go, because I remember being so nervous and crying the night before after I'd signed the contract, thinking, I've sold myself out. I'm going to be doing this for the next million years. Of course, it was a fabulous experience. What a cast. And Linda Bloodworth Thomas, what a writer. She literally, for the first 2 or 3 seasons, wrote those scripts by hand, in longhand on a legal pad. She was astonishing. And I had the gift of working with the most amazing cast. But it was a wonderful time in my life, and I met my husband, and I was pregnant on the show with my oldest son, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time.
It would have been so easy for you to just make things nice for her.
Well, I guess I get jealous sometimes of all the people you got that care about you. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to be sometimes.
I did a lot of TV movies, some of which I think were really quite wonderful. Overkill, the Aileen Wuornos story. That was the first job I did actually after Designing Women. Why they thought of me for that part, I'm not sure, but the producer later told me, he said, well, I wanted her to be sympathetic. I said, oh, okay. That was a terrific experience. I did it with a wonderful actress named Park Overall. But of course, since it was a television movie, you know, we weren't allowed to show that we were actually a couple. I wasn't even allowed to like put my arm around her. We weren't allowed to infer that we were a couple. So of course, when later they did it as a feature, I was so jealous because they didn't have any of those restraints of sponsors and censors and things like that.
Everybody, take a cookie. You know, last week at the firm, a couple of women did this. After you read your fortune out loud, add the words "in bed" to the end of it. You'll see, it's funny.
I actually had, you know, Oscar buzz for like, I don't know, 3 minutes. A wonderful script written by the late Audrey Wells, who was a phenomenal writer. I did 2 or 3 of her movies. Unfortunately, not a lot of people saw it because it was sort of a very small, limited art house kind of release. So it didn't get a wide audience, but it was a great experience.
Oh, crap! I'm late!
Is there something I can do?
Oh, yeah. Make this lousy hangover go away. Where the hell are those aspirin?
You know, perhaps I should get you a glass of water for those. Would you prefer sparkling or still? Or not? I see you're fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to finish this?
One of my favorite roles ever. I think I'd only done 1 guest spot on a show at that point. And this was before doing a guest spot on shows was considered cool or okay. So I was kind of had my nose up in the air about it a little bit. My agent called me and he said, you know, they want to offer you this guest spot on Frasier. And I said, oh. And he said, oh, you've got to read this. You've got to read this. It is so funny. So I read it and I said, oh, dear God. Where do I sign? You know, it was just one of the funniest things I'd ever read. Truly one of the best sitcoms ever, ever, ever. It was such a delightful cast, and they all adored each other. It was just one of the most fun sets to work on. To work with Kelsey and David Hyde Pierce was just heaven. They'd sit and play the piano between shots, and they were the most delightful guys to work with. And it was such a fun character because she had anger issues, but she could just be like really sweet and charming and funny and kind of sexy, and then she would just like go off on people like from 0 to 60, and it was a lot of fun.
You know, I hate to be a fusspot, but I'd prefer...
Yeah. Put your brother on. Put your brother on. Put your brother on!
What's nice about a really good show like that, if it's well done and well written, is that the audience is already ahead of you. They know the characters so well that they're already laughing before you've even finished a line sometimes. Like, for instance, when we wake up the next morning in bed and I light up a cigarette, the audience knows instantly he's gonna go, Just everything about it was so appalling to him, and the audience knew it so organically because they've been living with him and loving him for so long. But I got my first Emmy for that show, so it was so funny. Why doesn't the White House just contact Eric directly?
They did, it didn't work.
Why not?
Martha, this is very complicated. Please don't make me explain everything in details. We don't have...
Oh, I'm sorry. Just do as you say without asking. I'm sorry. You haven't changed a bit.
24, I think, is really when people looked at me a little bit differently, where I played the president's wife. I'm working with the late, brilliant Gregory Itzon, who played the president. He was an amazing actor, amazing actor. We had a lot of fun. We'd sing show tunes between takes. That show was just wild because you're supposed to believe that this entire season took place in 24 hours. You know, so I was constantly running over to the script supervisor saying, oh wait, we just had that argument that we did like 3 months ago, but we really only had it like an hour ago. So I'm still mad at him. It's like, oh my God, this is, somehow I found a way to change costumes 5 times within that 24 hours. I figured she's the first lady, she's allowed, right? We retain full control of our remaining operations. The Gerhardt family still runs North Dakota, but with Kansas City. Partnership, not a sale. That was an exceptional experience. That was the first time I think I'd been on a show where every element of that show, everybody was on their A game. I don't care you're talking about craft service to every crew member, to every writer, producer, cast member, costumer, everybody. I thought the show was just brilliant and mesmerizing, and the style of the show was so unique. All you had to do was say Fargo. It just sort of became, the word Fargo became not just the name of a city anymore. Fargo was sort of a state of mind. It was sort of a, I don't know how Noah Hawley did it. He's amazing. Don't assume, just because I'm an old woman, that my back is weak and my stomach's not strong. I make this counter because a deal is always better in war. But no mistake, we'll fight to keep what's ours to the last man. The character that I got to play, Floyd Gerhardt, who was sort of the head of a crime family, I loved playing that character. First of all, she's just raw. There's like no makeup. She's a rancher. She's a rancher's wife. You know, when her husband becomes debilitated from a stroke, she just has no problem just stepping in and taking over and taking control and facing down the syndicate and all this kind of stuff. And people described her as very scary. And I thought, well, I just think she was just sort of, you know, a really supportive mother of her crazy sons who were psychotic killers. And she came from a generation and a climate where she grew up where you just do what needs to be done.
Back the fuck off.
Release the hostage. It's over.
How'd you know we were going to be here? Did you get an anonymous tip?
What?
Oh, shit. What if it was the FBI? Because what you're doing right now, vigilantism, it's illegal. Again, the script was so fabulous. Thank you, Sigourney Weaver, for turning the part down. I was not familiar with the graphic novel at all, so I got a quick lesson in Watchmen history. It was just such a fun part, playing a badass FBI agent. I had so much fun. As women, you don't get to play those kind of parts very often where you're shooting at people and stuff. Not that I promote guns at all. I mean, she was just so dry, and she thought she had everybody's number, and she was like the coolest, and she thought that she had everybody else buffaloed and cowed, which she did most of the time, but she also was very vulnerable, but it was a lot of fun playing her.
I had an affair with Helen Fahey.
Want me to play Kate's mom? You got it. The script was so dark, very, very, very dark. And I had some concerns about how they were going to depict what was happening to those young girls, because I feel responsible for what I'm involved in and what's being put out there. You don't want to trigger the crazies. And I went to the director at one point and I said, I know it's none of my business because I'm not in those scenes, but I'm just curious, are we really gonna shoot those the way they're written, you know? And he said, oh, no, it's gonna be all sort of inferred. Certain things are gonna be inferred. And it was just as frightening and dark and, you know, but I mean, it was such an amazing cast. And working with Kate, what a treasure and a pleasure she is. I adore her. She calls me Mummy. She's game for anything. And she's so kind and so professional and so funny too. I mean, she really needs to do more comedy. She's hilarious.
Listen, affair's a strong word, very strong. It happened twice. Okay, 3 times tops. But, you know, the fact that I can't even remember how many should tell you all you need to know about what it meant to me.
I had an accident on the set one day. I fell over a railing and broke my rib. And we're waiting for the paramedics. And they finally get there and they're trying to get me on the gurney and everything. And she's saying, it's all right, Mummy. They're coming. They could take care of you, Mummy. So I got in the ambulance. The guy's starting to hook up an IV for me and everything. And he's saying, boy, your daughter was sure worried about you. I said, my what? I said, no. No, she's an actress. She plays my daughter. I said, didn't you recognize her? And he said, no, who was it? I said, Kate Winslet. And he went, oh my God, I miss Kate Winslet. And I said, could you get back to, please, fanboy? But no, that was a piece that was just put together with everybody at the top of their game. And plus I got to just let it all hang out. I had a padded butt and, you know, I got to wear goofy sweater vests and a bad wig. And I just got to not worry about, you know, looking good, which was a nice change of pace.
I'm sorry, did I do something to offend you?
Other than walk those chimney sweep boots on my silk rug? No?
Sorry, I didn't realize it was a shoes-off situation.
Well, it's shoe-dependent. Thank you for your time.
That was a bit of serendipity, and Hacks had just about everything I could have asked for in a part on the page from day one. When the producers called me in, when they offered it to me, I said, you're right, I'm perfect for this. I couldn't work for nicer, smarter, wittier people, more creative. Hannah Einbinder, what a dream as co-star. Just started season 3. We've got so much of the crew back because they love the show as much as we do. So I'm excited.
Just glad to see you're getting your fluids, sweetheart. You'll have to excuse her. She has a UTI. It's fine.
They had narrowed down hundreds of actresses to about 5 or 6 young women, and they sent me tapes of their auditions. I also looked up some of Hannah's stand-up comedy, and then we did what they call a chemistry read. I remember calling Hannah the night before, partly because I knew that she had really never acted before. And I just introduced myself and I said, you know, don't be nervous tomorrow. Let's just have fun. Let's just go for it. It's a great scene, you know, and she said that helped a lot with her nerves. And so it went great.
Anytime someone threads a frame of yours through a sprocket, you will be alive again. You see what that means? One day, every person on every film shot this year will be dead. And one day, all those films will be pulled from the vaults. And all their ghosts will dine together.
Well, when you have a writer like Damien Chazelle, who is so brilliant, you usually don't have to do much with the writing at all. And I was already a huge fan of his. And obviously the thought of doing it with Brad was just, you know, dream come true. I just was afraid because the scene was for a movie. It was a very long scene. And I thought, oh no. They're going to probably cut some of this, and it's so good. It's so good. And inevitably, it's a law of physics. Inevitably, the scene in a script that is the reason you took the job is always the scene that gets cut. Not cut, but edited down. But it wasn't, and it was just really right there on the page.
Child
born in 50 years, will stumble across your image flickering on a screen and feel he knows you, like a friend. You've been given a gift. Be grateful. You'll spend eternity with angels and ghosts.
Oh, looking at Brad's eyes, it was heartbreaking. But then you see at the end that she is every bit as much enamored with this idea that we still have to this day of movies kind of immortalizing people, and you're catching moments in time that will never come again and that you can watch over and over and over and over. And she tells Jack, that you're going to be immortal. And she believes that. And you can see then that she's just as much taken with that magical idea as anybody else that we've seen in the film. I feel very grateful that my career has been sort of a gradual escalation. I wouldn't have minded if it had been a little faster. I don't take any of it for granted. And I think it must be very difficult to have the opposite experience where you start out with all sorts of acclaim and become famous in your 20s or 30s, and then it somehow just fizzles and disappears. That's gotta be tough. That's gotta be tough. I'm glad I didn't go through that.